Welcome to the Arizona Nurses Association podcast series, Bridging Beliefs, where we take a closer look at the diverse end-of-life beliefs held by Arizona's communities. I'm Sandy DeJesus, chaplain at Honored Health, and I'll be your host as we explore how cultural values and spiritual perspectives shape the way patients and families experience end-of-life care. Whether you're here for your own personal educational growth or to earn nursing contact hours, thanks for joining us as we learn how to support patients with compassion and respect during this phase of life. To earn nursing contact hours, learners must listen to one or more of the podcasts in this series and submit an evaluation form. The Arizona Nurses Association is accredited as a provider of nursing continuing professional development by the American Nurses Credentialing Center's Commission on Accreditation. Stick around after the episode for details on how you can earn continuing education credit for listening to this episode and access our companion PDF summaries and quick guides for further learning and discussion. Welcome. Can you start by introducing yourself and sharing a little bit more about your story?
Absolutely. My name is Magali Martinez Saenz. I'm an LPN. I'm first-generation Mexican-American. I feel like that's absolutely helped me advocate for my patients in the very best way. And my background in healthcare goes back over 10 years. My most recent role has been working with hospice patients through a local agency, and that's been my absolute favorite job thus far. Starting out, my very first job in the clinical setting was as a patient transporter. A lot of that work involved also transporting patients from their rooms down to the morgue when they've deceased. So getting comfortable around that sort of work kind of had to happen very quickly. Also got to see a lot of patients that had 911 called when they were in hospice care and got to see what happened on our side and in the facility. Just got to really experience a lot of patient education as a CNA. And then I went to nursing school and eventually became an LPN and got to work bedside. And from there, decided bedside in the hospital wasn't really my thing. And I really enjoyed the flexibility of hospice nursing. I quickly learned, especially being in the emergency department in a big inner city hospital, that we did not have enough representation. We didn't have a lot of Spanish-speaking doctors or physicians that understood the different cultural implications. I really started diving deep into medical interpreting. I just really realized medical interpreting is something that's so necessary, especially in these settings where there's so much nuance and there's so much that can be missed if you don't get the language right or if you don't understand the traditions. My family's from Chihuahua. It's really been quite an experience to get to meet patients that share the same background and seeing the relief in their voice and just in the way that they express themselves. Are really grateful that they can have some representation or they have someone that can be that bridge between the information that they need in their healthcare.
And how do you and your family fit into the bigger picture of the customs, the background that you identify with?
Like I said, first generation Mexican-American, my family was very traditional. So my mother was Catholic. Later on, she converted to Christianity, and so we started going to a Christian church versus the traditional Catholic church. So I kind of got to see both sides of that. People of the global majority aren't necessarily a monolith. Even as I look at different aspects of my own family, they may not follow the same patterns as maybe some other traditional families might. And that's something that I definitely take into consideration when I'm talking to my patients or dealing with different family dynamics. Taking that into consideration that, there are some customs that I know are maybe more common. It may not always be the norm in every family that we see or treat.
So in a setting where traditional end-of-life customs can be fully carried out, what does that typically look like for those with different belief systems?
Some families want the patient to remain, for awake almost immediately after the patient has passed. Some of those traditions, like keeping their loved one there for a bit longer, especially for other family members that are maybe coming out of state, to see them and to be able to come and, pay their respects in person before they're taken to the funeral home. Just making sure that we're also honoring when they already have a priest or somebody that they trust in their faith. A lot of times hospitals only have one chaplain when they're not always sharing the same background or language. And so They may not feel comfortable receiving the blessing from someone that they don't know. So always making sure that we're giving them time to notify the necessary parties so that they can come.
Are there specific rituals or ceremonies that are important for the patient or the family? Are there physical or environmental needs or things involving things like food to be considered?
Like I mentioned, a lot of the beliefs and customs can vary just from family to family, whereas one family may feel comfortable stopping nutrition once they understand that it's not safe for their loved one to continue eating. For other families, they may feel like they're starving their loved one and they don't always understand the implications of continuing nutrition. And so I feel like in any type of circumstance, the biggest tool that we have is education and making sure that we are communicating it in a way and in the language that they're going to understand best. I find that a lot of the information tends to get lost in translation, making sure that they understand what the difference would be between like pleasure eating or accidentally causing aspiration and all that. So just being mindful that, again, not all of our cultures are necessarily a monolith, where there will be things that are, quote unquote traditional, but may not apply in every single setting. I think it's always approaching every single family with their own unique identity and not coming with our pre-existing notions of what we knew another family that was Salvadorian or Mexican came with, where I remember they had so many candles and just automatically having this vision of this family is going to mirror what this other family wanted to do. This family was very Catholic. They wanted a rosary. They wanted their priest. You might find another family that says we're not religious at all. That's extremely important to remember. But at the same time, coming to every family with an open mind and open heart to whatever tradition might be familiar to them.
How do all these practices help provide comfort to our patients, to their families during this time?
I really feel like it definitely allows them that closure. It allows them to openly grieve without feeling shame or feeling fear that they're going to be turned away. Or, I think just, like I said, honoring whatever feels right to them is what's really important. I know when my grandmother passed away, my mother was very reluctant to coming up, even walking up to her casket. Did my best to encourage her, but at the same time respecting that she didn't want to at that moment. And when she was ready, she eventually went.
That's very important. As far as the nurse's role in supporting patients and families, what are some considerations when approaching end-of-life care that we need to address?
Oftentimes, we see in some Hispanic households where there is one person that is the decision maker or the person that everyone's kind of looking to make the decisions or who's going to do right by their loved one. What will often happen is that one person may not be the legal decision maker. And so we have to be very careful, especially when we have big families with a lot of adult children. I like to have family meetings as we start to get closer or when I start to notice our patient is, potentially starting to transition. We'll have a family meeting and start to discuss what the next couple of days or weeks might look like and make sure to answer any questions that they have with everyone present. Because what I do notice is that it can be like playing telephone.
Yes.
Where you'll have that one person that's, has been able to get the information, but they'll go and explain it. And someone will always come back and say, well, I don't think they would have said that. Or that doesn't sound right. And so just having everyone in the room that is going to, potentially have the most questions or the most input, having them be there and present, so that everyone's just on the same page. I feel like that absolutely helps smooth things over. And then there aren't any misunderstandings or confusion when it comes time to make those decisions. That you don't have that one person that's, accidentally calling 911 or wanting to start CPR or getting angry that certain medications aren't being given. There's just so much nuance to it, but absolutely having everyone in the room at once helps prevent any issues with that.
What are some common barriers, such as hospital policies, state laws, or time constraints that might make it difficult to honor end-of-life traditions?
That's a really great question. A lot of agencies right now are very overstaffed, and some of the larger ones right now are not taking patients in until they're very close to transitioning. And so that makes it challenging to really find the time to get to know your patient, to understand what their end-of-life needs were, or their wants. And so you kind of come to that point where it can almost be too late to set up some of the things that they would have wanted. And that makes it really challenging. I feel like we need a lot more support for hospice patients and hospice and families as well. Another big issue that I see is if a patient is unhoused, they're unable to access hospice care. And we have a ridiculous amount of our population that's unsheltered right now that would qualify for hospice services because a lot of them became unhoused when they got sick and they weren't able to work, and they're dying on the streets of Phoenix. It's really heartbreaking.
What's one key takeaway you'd like nurses to remember when caring for patients with diverse end-of-life traditions?
I would say always approaching it with an open mind, approaching every single home that you enter with an open heart and mind, and reserving your judgment, absolutely, and always making sure you're doing your best to advocate for your patients' wishes and making sure that you're doing your best to eliminate any barriers for them receiving that information, such as language barriers. Sometimes it can be easy to forget that you can have a family member in the home that's interpreting, but it may not always be exactly what you need to be said. And so remembering just the things that we can control, making sure that we're addressing those things before writing off the families and their wishes. Just always, I feel like in almost every circumstance, there's been a way to make accommodations to honor those wishes. Because I would say I don't think I've ever been in a home that would mirror another home's exact traditions or practices. The very best thing to do is to speak to the family and to gain a better understanding of what their own unique identity is and what their own unique religion is and what their wishes are, and using that as your foundation to care for that family. Because even though I have a certain way that I would do things in my home, there might be another first-generation Mexican-American family that's completely opposite from what I would do. So just taking your patient and the family's lead to their approach to the care that they would like to see.
I really appreciate your insights. How can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
I have a public social media presence. I go by Phoenix Mommy on Instagram, PHX_MAMI, because I'm a mom and I live in Phoenix. I always like to share about different resources we have going on or legislative actions that we can take to continue to advocate for patients around the state. As long as we work together and continue advocating for our loved ones, we can create a better future for even ourselves, because we will all end up in that situation one day.
Well, I appreciate being able to talk to you, and thank you for sharing your gifts with others.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us to learn more about how to support your patients and their families during end-of-life care. A special thanks to the American Nurses Association for funding this important initiative, and to Grand Canyon University for generously providing access to the recording studio. This episode is part of a larger series exploring end-of-life beliefs across Arizona's diverse communities. We hope you'll tune in to our other episodes, available wherever you get your podcasts or through the Arizona Nurses Association website. To earn CE credit for this episode and to download companion materials, including a PDF summary of today's discussion and quick reference guides, visit us online at aznurse.org/podcast. Until next time, thank you for being part of this ongoing conversation.